You've been told your whole life that your value is something you earn, something you prove, maybe even something other people get to decide. What if that's not just wrong? What if that story is the source of most of the pain that we're living in right now? That's what this conversation is all about. Stick around. Welcome back, my friends, to the D-Rate the Hate podcast. I'm your host, Wilk Wilkinson, your blue-collar sage, calming outrage and helping to navigate a world divided by fog and those who would spread that fear, outrage, and grievance. The D-Rate the Hate podcast is proudly produced in collaboration with Braver Angels, America's largest grassroots, cross-partisan organization working towards civic renewal. This podcast amplifies the mission that we share to foster a more respectful and united America where civic friendship thrives even when we disagree. Each week, through the power of story, conversation, and connection with incredible guests, we work to build bridges instead of barriers. Not to change minds on the issues, but to change how we see one another when we differ. Because, friends, it really is about bettering the world one attitude at a time. We did not create the hate, but together we can derate the hate. So be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, share it with a friend, and visit braverangels.org to learn how you can get involved in the movement to bridge the partisan divide. Friends, I am so incredibly grateful that you have joined me for another powerful D-Rate the Hate episode. So let's get to it. Most of us are operating from a definition of value that we never chose and never questioned. It sounds something like this. You are valuable because of what you've achieved, what you own, how many people approve of you, what you look like, where you come from. The list changes, but the logic stays the same. Your worth is conditional. It has to be earned, and it can be taken. My guest today, Regi Wilson, has spent years building a case that this belief system isn't just false, it's the engine behind so much of the social pain that we experience. Hate, division, violence, the inability to see humanity in people who are different from us. Regi traces all of it back to that single, unexamined lie about what a human being is worth. Regi is the founder and CEO of Equal, a global human initiative, a nonprofit anchored in a framework called value identity. This conversation is about what it actually means to shift out of the old story and what becomes possible when you do. Let's get into it with my friend, Regi Wilson. Here we go. Regi Wilson, welcome back to the D-Rate the Hate podcast, brother. So good to see you.
It's great to see you as well, Wilk. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I just wanted to bring you back on the podcast here to kind of reintroduce you to the DTH listeners. It's been a while since you've been on. I know you've been on a couple times. We've had several conversations, both recorded and non-recorded, and it's always good to get you back on the podcast to reintroduce what the value identity proposition is and what you're doing with Equal Universe and all that stuff. So Regi, thanks again, man, for coming on again. So let's just start from the top. Let's get into what it was that, how value proposition started being part of your life, Equal Universe started being part of your life. Let's get into that and see where this conversation goes.
Absolutely, Wilk. Well, this was birthed actually right after witnessing what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis, as did the entire world. But what was unique to me is that I was actually in Minneapolis in 2018 during the Super Bowl festivities that were being presided over. The music aspect of it was being presided over by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who were longtime friends of Prince Rogers Nelson, who passed away in 2016. I arrived a day early and I had some time to spare. And so I just happened to like salsa music. And so I found myself at the Conga Bistro. Upon entering the establishment, I had a shirt on that the person who was attending the door at the time liked quite a bit. And he commented to me, how could I come there with a shirt like that on and not bring him one in his size? And so I responded, after, looking in the direction of where the voice was coming from and seeing this huge person, I said, hey, man, the only way that I can turn this into something that will fit you is to make it a blanket. And so we started laughing, and we literally ended up talking the entire night and sharing our stories. Well, that individual happened to be George Floyd. And so when I saw what happened to him in 2020, it hit me differently, because this was someone that I knew, someone that I had seen smile, someone I knew his voice and had heard his story. And so I just began to ask myself, what can I do to change the trajectory of this and all of the disparities in our society? And what can I do to increase safety in the world? And that is when I began to write down my thoughts. And what came to me at that time was two things: is that until we are all safe, none of us are safe, and that the vast majority of people are operating from pain. And what is being expressed in society is literally one thing. It's people pouring the pain that they're experiencing into themselves and out onto each other. And so I began to, to kind of problem solve and to look into what it is that I could develop to pivot people away from that, experience into a better way of living and being.
Yeah, I want to key in on that line that you say there, Reggie, that until all of us are safe, none of us are safe. Because I think that's an important line, and more than just a tagline or a slogan. I think there's something deeper there that I want to get into, because people who listen to this podcast know I speak in a lot of cliches. It's part of my deal, but I don't do it because they're cliche. I do it because there's meaning behind it. And I think there's a lot of importance in a lot of things that people see as cliche. This is one of those things. Until all of us are safe, none of us are safe. I want to get into that because it immediately brings to mind for me the idea that, and I don't know who said it initially, but there's that thing, first they came for so and so, but I wasn't so and so, so I didn't worry about it. And then they came for this person, but I was not that person, so I didn't worry about it. And the phrase goes on, and I'm just obviously paraphrasing in a big way, but the reality is eventually it comes back to, and then they came for me. And there was nobody left. Then they came for me, and there was nobody left. And I look around now, Reggie, and you've seen it too. You and I have talked about this, but I look around now and I see people celebrating things that the human depravity of certain situations. People celebrate them. Somebody gets killed, and certain people celebrate it. This is not exclusive to one side or the other. I've seen it, one side or the other. And when I say one side or the other, I mean the political spectrum. We saw it. We saw people from the left celebrating when Charlie Kirk got killed, and we saw people on the right celebrating recently when Renee Good was killed by Border Patrol officers, or Alex Preddy. We saw people, here in Minnesota, the state in which I live, the state in which you have deep roots. We saw people celebrating when Melissa Hortman, the former Minnesota speaker, was killed, and I don't care who it is. I don't care what they've done. I mean, going back to the George Floyd example, George Floyd had a very checkered past, but nothing he did in his past warrants the fact that somebody would celebrate him getting killed. Did he make a poor life choice? Yeah. Did Alex Preddy make a poor life choice? Yeah. Were these things did all of these people in some way probably play in some convoluted way, do something that contributed to them getting killed? Maybe they did. But in no way, shape, or form do these things warrant the celebration of another human being getting killed. So
Hmm.
dive into that. When you say, until all of us are safe, none of us are safe. Dive into that and tell me what you mean.
Absolutely. The one thing that I discovered on my journey to increasing safety in the world is that the origin produces the outcome. And what I mean by that is that in order for safety to exist, any society, any group, any movement, a family, a community, you name it, is made up of individuals. And so a society, a community can only be as safe as the individuals that exist within it or that make up that whole. Okay. And so if an individual is not safe in their relationship with themselves, if they are experiencing a lack of an ability to see and to understand and to experience their own intrinsic value, then in that lack, in that absence, there exists loss. The lack of something means the loss of something. And what is inherent to loss is pain. Just think about the loss of a loved one, loss of a dream, loss of a job, loss of a home, loss of a friend, on and on and on and on. So what is coupled, what is paired with loss is pain. So if I am experiencing disparity and pain in the way that I see myself and in the way that I experience myself, when I show up in proximity to you in society, that is what I bring with me. If I am at risk in my relationship with myself, and there are three questions that I ask when I do talks and when I share this model, is can you love what you don't value? Yourself included and your neighbor. Will you protect what you don't value? Yourself included and your neighbor. And will you invest in and build what you don't value? Yourself included and your neighbor. And so as you can see, the theme of this kind of idea is that it is value or the ability for us to experience value in our origin space, in your internal space. That is what produces value as an outcome. Safety is a value outcome. Respect is a value outcome. Love is a value outcome. Being celebrated, being self-aware, self-celebrating. Those are all value outcomes. But we have to start at an origin that will produce that. So if people are unsafe in their relationship with themselves, then they're going to show up in our societal spaces with that same lack of safety, and they're going to produce more unsafe outcomes, which end up making us all less safe and which also end up hurting all of us. So the entire objective of the model is to pivot people into a space where they can become aware of their intrinsic value, that they can now understand that their value, their intrinsic value is not negotiable. It cannot be subtracted from. It is not determined by what you have or what you've achieved or what you've acquired. It is in your design. It is your design. And that is where your value rests. And I'll land with this. Why is a car valuable? I'm a guy, so I use car examples.
Sure,
Forgive me.
sure.
It doesn't matter how expensive or inexpensive it is. The car is valuable because it creates motion. It moves you from point A to point B. And why does the car create motion? Because of its design. You are valuable because you have a unique and intrinsically unique design that only you have. And so through that design, what you bring to me, what you bring to us, and what you bring to the world, we can only find that in you in the same way that your heart is an organ within your body that has a unique design and that it does something that none of the other members can do, but all of the other members need. And so you exist in the body of humanity, also bringing something so unique that none of us have, but that we all need. And that is where your value rests. And that is a story that so many of us have never heard about ourselves because we've been indoctrinated to accept that our value is determined by things that are external to us as opposed to our inherent design.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple different things that I want to get into there is so we can definitely dig in deeper into that self-love, that self-value thing. But in terms of our relation to other people, there's a value proposition there as well. And I think both have to be recognized. And I think it needs to be recognized what that relationship is between the two.
Exactly.
Because if we don't value ourselves, as you're talking about, Reggie, and I do want to get into that a little bit deeper, if we don't value ourselves and don't really love ourselves, it's a lot harder to see value in other people. I mean, if we can't even see it in ourselves,
Exactly.
we have a lot harder time seeing it in other people. And then to take that one step further, you talk about that pain coming from a reduced sense of value. Well, we know just it's given, we see it all the time. Hurt people.
Exactly.
And so let's take this a couple different places, and I want to dive into again a little bit further into what I was talking about initially, in the sense that when we don't value other human beings,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that a lot of that originates from value in ourselves.
Exactly.
So we can go both, and we can talk about both, but when we don't value other human beings, we do things that we wouldn't otherwise do.
Absolutely.
And that leads to horrific things like celebrating the death of somebody that we see as an other, as somebody who, when we put everything into this us versus them tribalism thing, and then that makes it easy to dehumanize others. And then there's this thing there, once we dehumanize them, that they're no longer worthy of any kind of value.
Exactly.
In terms of a human being. So when something horrific happens to them, like they get killed, they die, they're murdered, whatever, I don't care whether it's homicide or just die from natural causes or whatever, but the lowest form of human depravity in my mind, or one of the lowest forms of human depravity in my mind, is to celebrate the death of another human being, or celebrate the pain and something horrible happening to another human being. But I think you're right. I think a lot of that does go right back to, do we value ourselves? And then how do we define that? Are we going to love something we do not value? Are we going to protect something we do not value? Are we going to invest in something we do not value? So in terms of, first of all, and people on the D-Rate the Hate podcast, or people listening to the D-Rate the Hate podcast, know that I take a lot of the things that we talk about on this show come right back to personal accountability, personal responsibility. And the reality is this, Reggie: if we do not value, everybody in our society, then it's hard to say that we value anybody in our society.
Absolutely.
To kind of play on the words that you
Yes.
say, if none, or if all of us are not safe, then none of us are safe.
Yes.
But I say that to say this, that value thing, we can say, well, I value myself, I love myself, I'm great, I just don't love them. All right. Well, as a society, if I value society, if I value the country that I live in and I claim to love, I don't get to pick everybody that's here. I just don't. I think we have laws. I think we have, there's a lot of importance to the idea of borders and laws and everything else. And then there's definitely a right way and a wrong way to do things. But the reality is if I value society, if I value a civil society, if I'm going to love, protect, and invest in that civil society, I have to value everything that comes along with that.
Exactly.
I can't say I love my wife, but I hate whatever this part. The country that I love is the same thing. Are there things that that I would like to see about the country differently? Yes. But if I love my country, then I'm going to, if I value my country, I'm going to love it and I'm going to protect it and I'm going to invest in it. And you can't do those things through hate, you know? Hate
Absolutely
is
not.
not something that you can do to protect or invest in.
Exactly.
Dive into that for me a bit, Reggie.
Absolutely. Again, what I hear what you're saying is that it's all or nothing. Okay. You can't, itemize. Your love is not a menu item, or the person that you love is not a menu item where you can pick and choose. Either you love the person or you don't. And so again, the entire premise of this is that it is the origin that is going to produce the outcome. So we have to exist in a place of experiencing it. It's kind of like, I see it like value identity is like having eyes. It allows you to do two things. It allows you to see yourself, but it also allows you to, it gives you the ability to also see me. And the thing that I think that we miss so much is that I know that we're a society of laws and policies and politics, but people operate from a space of internal desire. That is what drives us. So it doesn't matter how many laws or how many penalties that exist out there that I may have to experience because of a bad choice. If I don't have the core desire to operate from, to adhere to that thing, to see you as human and not to other you. Okay, because anytime you other someone, then you, as you said, you begin to demean and to diminish their value, who they are, what they are.
That's
and
right.
Then they become less of what they are to you. So, and again, where does that, because we operate as human beings from choice and desire, choices. And so what motivates the choice? What motivates the desire? Because it's not going to come from a policy. It's not going to come from a law. Those are things, adhering to laws and policies, again, come from choice and desire. So what motivates the choice? What motivates the desire? It has to come from you. And so the origin, again, produces the outcome. So if you are in a space where you can experience value internally and understand that your humanity cannot be diminished and subtracted from, then you now have the capacity to see mine. You
That's
now
right.
have the capacity to love mine. You now have the capacity to protect mine and to invest in mine. And I'll land with this. The human body is actually the solution, which is why I use it a lot. What is a body? It's a bunch of individuals, and everyone is different from one another, existing in the same place together. Isn't that what a society is? But the wisdom in the human body is that no one cares that the others are different from them, because they all understand that the differences exist by design. So the differences are not liabilities, they are assets. The heart is different from the lungs because the design has to be different in order for it to do and to contribute what it has to contribute to the body. And so because they see their differences as assets, they are more attracted to each other. And therefore, it is a system of collaboration.
Yeah.
And as a result, the body produces the most, life and the ability to sustain it, the most important commodity that there is. So if we will take what is living and breathing in us as a design already and apply that to our societal spaces, we can also begin to reduce harm. We can also begin to reduce disparity and problems and pain, because nobody in my body is fighting the others. They like each other. So if we will take the same template, this is a solution. Take the same template and begin to observe it and to see how successful it is and how successful it is in terms of achieving its intended outcome, and begin to apply that in our societal spaces, I think that we can see transformation in terms of what we experience in proximity to each other day to day.
No, that's right. And I think it's a fantastic metaphor. I mean, I think when we think about, I think it's a fantastic way to think about things. And then when we think about, culture and our individual differences and the value that each one of us brings, and this is one of those things that I think, and I'll go back to the kind of the self-love thing for a second, Reggie, because I think, again, I think it really comes back to our love for ourselves. I mean, we have an awfully hard time loving anybody else if we don't, love ourselves first. And then the idea of, again, of hurt people. And when we see some of the things that we see in society today, and, whether it be, somebody who decides to take their own life. One of the things about suicide that has always bothered me. I've had a couple of people that were very close to me that have unfortunately decided to take their own life. And they always say, that taking your own life doesn't end the pain; it just transfers it to everybody that loved you. Or in the case, the horrific case, we just saw another one this week where somebody was so, I don't know if you want to call them mentally ill or certainly mentally deranged in some fashion, but they decided to kill, he killed his ex-wife and I think one of his kids shot his we just had a person here, horrible situation here in Minnesota. Reggie, I don't know if you've heard of it, but a friend of mine, Jeff Johnson, he was a gubernatorial candidate. He's been to my house here a couple times. His daughter was stabbed to death by her husband, and then he, I mean, these things, Reggie, it really comes back down to, do I value who I am on this planet?
Exactly.
And then do I value what human life is? When people begin to completely erase what human life really is and what human life really means. I saw I don't know, I saw a video recently that there was somebody talking about the mathematical chances that you, Reggie Wilson, or me, Wilkinson, the mathematical chances that we would be here at this time, out of all the generations that it took for us to get here. And, not only, each generation, if anybody in our lineage would have, died before, that next person in line to get to you and me, we wouldn't have ever existed.
Right.
It was like 46 trillion to one that you would be sitting there right now and I'd be sitting here. And then the likelihood that you and I would be having this conversation, Reggie, is even, even further down the line in probability. But that is an amazing thing. So when you think about it from a mathematical standpoint and say, and then not even to, mention, we can get into the swimmers and the eggs and everything else, right? And that in itself is a mathematical anomaly.
Right.
That was the one to get you there and me here. That alone should give people enough hope and enough love for who they are and why they are the one that's here taking the breath that they are taking today. And then they should look around themselves and say, each one of us, you, and you, every one of us is a mathematical anomaly that should be celebrated every single day. And that is something to be so grateful for.
Absolutely. I'd like to just say, societal narratives are repeated on a daily basis. Unfortunately, what you and I are talking about is not. And in order for people to normalize their value, messages like this need to go out often, even daily, because all of us are operating from a program. And so the voices that we hear that tell us about who we are end up becoming the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are. And the thing that I'd like to just kind of, if in this short moment that we have together, is to help people to understand, again, their proximity to value. You know, we are told that we are valuable by default of what you have, by default of what you've achieved, by default of what you've approved, you know, by default of how many likes you have on social media. But understand that none of these things would have any power or purpose without you. Money could not be spent without people. Clothes could not be worn without people. Houses could not be bought. Degrees could not be earned. None of it would have any purpose or power without you. So in actuality, it is not those things that assign value to you. It is you that assigns value to those things. It is those things that exist to serve you, not the other way around. So again, you sit in the position of power. You sit in the position of value. Even a driver's license. I have the ability to drive. The license is just an acknowledgement, a celebration of what already existed in my ability and in my design. A college degree is simply a celebration of what already existed, the intelligence and the talent that already existed in me. It is only an acknowledgement of what already is. And so right. I think that once we begin to see that our value is not diminishable, it is not negotiable, it cannot be taken from us, or it cannot be, bargained. It is literally living and breathing in you. I think that we will begin to see ourselves through a different lens, because most people have lived their entire lives with someone that they have never met themselves. There is a story that society tells us about who we are, but there's another story that is incredible that nature tells us about who we are. And what I'm sharing with you is this other story. And the the incredible you is in your design. It is what nature has declared, determined, and designed you to be.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, there's an infinite value that I think a lot of people don't recognize. And you're right. I think that's the untold story in so many people's lives. That's the untold story in some, it's that untold or unknown chapter in everybody's story. And we just have to keep on putting out that message, Reggie, because, people like you and I, we recognize it. We recognize the beauty of it. We recognize the value. We know that, you cannot love something you do not value.
Right.
You will not protect something you do not value. And most of all, you will not invest in something you do not value. And I think everybody needs to invest in themselves, protect themselves, and love themselves.
Absolutely. Because there's every reason to. And again, safety is first. And especially in this moment that we are navigating, which is so challenging. But I think that we have to understand that until we become a safe space and a safe place for ourselves, that we will not be able to see safety grow and scale itself in our society, because a society can only be a product of the individuals that exist in it. And so in order for safety to grow and exist, it has to begin at its origin, which is you and me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I just like to say this, planting some seeds. I talk about the seed and the fruit that it produces. I'd like to leave the audience with this challenge. Say these 3 words plus 2 more words to 3 people every day. You are valuable to me. Starting with yourself. Plant those seeds every day. You are, look at yourself in the mirror and say that to yourself. You are valuable to me. And then say it to 2 more people. And watch what happens.
That's right.
That is a powerful origin to start from.
That it is, my friend. That it is. Well, you are valuable to me, Reggie, and I value your friendship greatly. It's been another great conversation, brother. I appreciate you so much, and we will do it again.
Thank you, Will. I enjoyed the conversations. Thanks for having me. It's always great to be here. This is family. And yeah, this is what families do.
Friends, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to get the D-Rate the Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. We really are better together. So please take a moment to visit braverangels.org and consider joining the movement towards civic renewal and bridging our political divides. This is Wilk wrapping up for the week saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make every day the day that you want it to be. With that, my friends, I'm going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.